Testing.
I'm Brian Marriott, the mayor in the city. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're glad to be here, and this is Mayor Pro Tem Troy Bourne. And
I'll be doing the singing portion of the program.
Troy will do the singing. I'll do the dancing, but that comes later. First, you got to give us all your questions. So this is the second workshop we've done to get a feel for what people have in mind when they think about the open space owned by the residents of the city and various ideas for open space and the history. And this is a time to kind of flesh all that out and hear your questions and get the feedback. After all, it is land owned by all of us, and we want to take the right approach and keep those things in mind. So we appreciate the fact that you took your time on a summer evening to come out here. We're going to have a presentation. Troy will take you through the agenda, and we'll hit some questions. And what I would say is, if it's on your mind, speak up, because these workshops are fairly rare. They take a little bit of work to put together, and we want to make sure we hit on all the right points and get all your questions answered and clarified for you. Troy?
Thanks. In terms of an agenda, and we don't need to get too hung up on fixed steps, what we wanted to start with, and where we started the last time, was a brief presentation by the city staff to kind of explain a little bit of how we got to where we are right now and why we're kind of stopping in the process and doing a little bit of collecting of information before we move forward. We need to make some adjustments to some zoning codes on the Northwest Open Space, and we didn't want to move forward and do that, even though we knew what we wanted to do with portions of the property, until we had a better sense of what we want to do with the balance of the property. And so we kind of stopped. And the city can explain a little bit as to why that was necessary. Once they're done with their presentation, we're going to open it up to questions. And I think this worked pretty well last time. It gets a little bit gray, but what we'd like to do before we jump into comments and ask you for, hey, what do you think we should do here? What do you think we should do there? If there's any clarifying comments or questions based on what staff presents or things that weren't clear about the process or why we're here or what we need to do from this point forward, we'd like to start there so at least everybody in the room understands, where the platform is that we're standing on there. And then we'll move forward with suggestions or ideas that we might be able to incorporate going forward. Does that sound good? So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Charlie View, Assistant City Manager, and he can walk you through a little bit of the history and how we got where we are right now, and then we'll go from there.
Good evening. I'm going to briefly describe a number of documents that are available on the city's website. There is a dedicated page for the Northwest Open Space, so everything we're going to talk about tonight is available on the web. You don't have to memorize the documents. You're welcome, of course, to take notes, but they're all available on the city's webpage. And of course, make sure we're talking about the Northwest Open Space. Consider it the gateway to San Juan Capistrano, located off of Camino Capistrano, the northern portion of town, above J. Sarah in that location. So, and obviously shown on the aerial map. So first is, how was the property acquired? Measure D was a measure passed by the residents of San Juan Capistrano to assess themselves for purchase of open space. It was used to purchase the Kenishita Farm property, which we're sitting in today, the Swanner and Williams properties, and the property also where the sports park and the ecology center reside. The second measure in 2010 was the second bond measure where the residents assessed themselves. Most of this money was used to purchase the eastern open space, which includes the riding park, Riata Park, and the creek area. Importantly, a little of the money was left over and has been identified as a potential funding source for some of the park improvements in the Northwest Open Space. This is the first of several technical discussions. We'll try and move through them quickly. I've been asked to break down the information as best I can. So there's two primary land use regulatory documents that each city in California utilizes. One is called the general plan, and the other one is zoning. And the best way to equate that relationship is the general plan is the highest legal document in terms of establishing policies for land use and other regulations, which I'll talk about in a few moments, and policy direction. And the zoning is the document to implement it. So much like the Constitution of the United States and the legislation, of course, any law passed has to be constitutional, same relationship. Any zoning action has to be consistent with the general plan. And so the superior document is the general plan, and the zoning follows it. The last comprehensive update to the general plan in San Juan Capistrano was between 1999 and 2002. And that's important as we go through some of the supplementary documents tonight to just remember the context and history of when that was done. So as we said, the general plan land use element is one of multiple elements. So legally, there are 7 required elements established by the state. The land use is one of them. Another one a lot of people are familiar with is the circulation element. That's the road plans for any given community. Another one is the housing element, establishes housing plans for a community. They must be internally consistent. There's a safety element and several other elements. Importantly, they work with each other. Community park is one of 8 open space designations. So within the general plan land use, you'll have residential designations, you'll have commercial designations, industrial designations, and then open space. So in San Juan Capistrano, there's 8 open space. Another city might have 3, another city might have 5, it depends on the city. The community park designation, this language, and I'm not going to read it to you, but this is important. This applies to all 3 community park sites in San Juan Capistrano, which includes C. Russell Park, the park we're in today, and then Northwest Open Space. 2 of those 3 were established in 2002 when this was adopted. It was visionary for the Northwest Open Space because, of course, it wasn't built at that time, but it had been purchased. Importantly, another element is the general plan parks and recreation element. So this is a separate element from the land use. It is related, and again, they must be internally consistent. And this one is specific to the Northwest Open Space. The language here talking about multi-purpose fields open for community events, might be lighted, have picnic areas, biking trails, all that was specific to the Northwest Open Space. And again, it was adopted in 2002. The property was purchased prior to that time frame. So the next layer down is zoning. As I mentioned earlier, the zoning must be consistent with the general plan to be valid. There's 3 general kinds of land use regulations. So regulations is a little more specific than a general plan, which is a vision policy document. Principal uses, those things you can do with the least amount of review by regulatory bodies, whether it be the Planning Commission, City Council, or staff. And again, for the Northwest Open Space, Community Park, multi-purpose sports fields, picnic areas, several of these are all things that might say were assumed to fit the Northwest Open Space in terms of a zoning framework. The next one are what's conditional use permits. That's uses that need a little special review, either by the Planning Commission and or the City Council. So a bed and breakfast, you might want that in an area to support recreational opportunities, but you probably want a little additional review how that's established. A church or religious organization, same situation. Certainly mining, drilling, those kind of things, if you're going to do those in open space, you want a special level of review. And the last one is what are considered accessory uses. The accessory uses are those uses thought to support a primary or conditionally permitted use. So you can see up there, it might include a caretaker residence. If you have a lot of sports fields with expensive equipment, you might decide, you know what, we want a 24-hour resident. We want someone on the property at night to watch over it. Our maintenance and support facilities, you might have a small yard-like facility for housing equipment that is used to support the fields. So, but they're not a primary use of the property. Along with the general plan and zoning, there are what are called related policy documents. Importantly, these don't have the same legal weight as the general plan and zoning. Generally speaking, they're advisory. The council and our planning commission can take them under advice. They don't have to follow them directly. So there's City Council Policy 506, established in 1995. So really at the same time the Northwest Open Space was purchased, they said, hey, we have this large new asset, what might be used in it, and it identified a number of things. Importantly, at the time, it talked about group uses, special events. It did speak to camping as one of those potential group or special event uses that in the policy. And then the second is the open space master plan. There was an initial one adopted back in the 80s, then updated in 2010. So the update was after the general plan, after the purchase, and it talked about for the Northwest open space amenities, including active recreation, community gardens, group picnics, areas. Some of these are consistent with other documents, some are inconsistent. And that's one of the discussions that the Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem will be having with you this evening, is some of those inconsistencies in these different regulatory and policy documents and how to sort those out. So the current Northwest property uses, and again, if you recall the zoning and general plan, not all these are consistent with the current regulated uses, permitted use on the property. But you have natural open space. A lot of property out there is unimproved today. You have the dog park. You have the equestrian staging area. You have the city-owned Swanner House historic property where we have Hamilton Oaks, a stone throne, kind of winery. It's an event center. Small weddings occur there. Those all are on the property today. The next is talking about the two proposed concepts, the Putuidem Village and the Red Tail Hawk proposal. So you have the Putuidem Village as a community park project to reflect and embrace the importance of the Native American culture in San Juan Capistrano. The design phase is complete. We have project plans for the larger park. We have a concept plan you'll see in a few moments for the smaller park that's under consideration. Importantly, one of the aspects of this is cost. It's over $2 million for the smaller scale park and $60,000 to $80,000 a year to maintain that smaller scale park. So there are costs associated with that project that need to be recognized. This is an overview of the smaller scale Putuidem Village. That was one or two discussion items that really were the reasons for these community meetings. We had the Red Tail proposal, which we'll discuss in a moment, and we had the Putuidem Village, and the council decided it was really important to get some community feedback and input before they moved on. So the Putuidem Village project, as it's currently envisioned, is smaller scale, but still has a number of the features that were important to the community when they worked on the project. Then we had the request for proposal. RFP is request for proposal for limited use of the property. This goes back to prior to the current council. So back in August of 2017, before the last election, the council had been contacted by a property owner who lives up by the Northwest Open Space, very well known in town, runs a local commercial building, and also has a number of residential properties that him and his family have developed. And he was concerned with the conditions in the Northwest Open Space and approached the council about maybe you could combine some more commercial-like activities, some more active use of the property, and generate revenue to support this open space and other open space. The council decided that that might be a good idea. They had a public process, went out and requested proposals that were coordinated and submitted for staff review. Initially, 11 proposals were received through a vetting process that was limited down to 3 different concepts. I'm going to go over those briefly in a minute. Importantly, the council invited the 3 proposers to participate in a public forum. 2 of the 3 participated. The other one indicated that given the kind of community uncertainty about the Northwest Open Space, thought it would be better not to continue the process at that time. So you have Capistrano Vineyards proposal. This is by the representatives who initiated the discussion about what Northwest Open Space, and it's much too small to read, but concept-wise it has restaurant uses, wedding venue, equestrian facilities, potentially a Mustang horse facility to help with preserve those animals, and other equestrian-like uses. It did incorporate the Putuidem Village concept and would support the operation and maintenance of the Putuidem Village concept. The proposal that did not actually participate in the community meeting was Metro Commercial Realty. Theirs is primarily a soccer facility, recognizing this community has expressed regularly that they need more soccer facilities. They proposed primarily a soccer facility for the site, but again chose not to participate in the public discussion. The third one was Red Tail Acquisitions proposal. This is the one that the most common tag name is the glamping proposal, but if you read it, there are many other uses. They again supported the Putuidem Village Community Park concept. They do have some camping, both RVs where you would bring your own unit and park it there. They also have Airstream trailers, what are called safari tents, and at the again, recognize the interest of the community, indicated they could include some soccer facilities if desired as part of the project. So the next thing is how these, importantly, that project would generate revenue of approximately $600,000 to a little over $1 million, depending on scale, which then could be attributed and used for other community service, recreation uses as the council directed. So there are zoning challenges for the projects. I think it went too far. For Putuidem Village, again, community park is the zoning designation and the general plan designation. It does allow for accessory uses incidental to a permitted use. So if you, depending on how you classified the Putuidem Village or other uses, they might be accessory if you had sports fields out there or you had other uses. Public buildings and facilities include museums and other public services. So if you could fit it in those categories, you can make a case that the zoning could allow for the Putuidem Village, but you have to make an interpretation. Importantly, what would color that interpretation and might well create a challenge is if the interpretation by the City Council is that the Putuidem Village Native American project is a passive recreation facility or nature study center or similar center, those are not permitted under the current zoning and general plan categories, community park. So importantly, again, this is what we're talking about. There's some conflicts between various documents. This is one of those conflicts. Depending on what you categorize the Putuidem Village and some of the other uses out there, you may recall we had some other uses out there. If you look at the zoning regulations, it doesn't allow alcohol consumption and food and beverage consumption, but those are clearly part of the winery use out there today. So there are conflicts between the current uses and proposed uses and the zoning regulations out there. The second one, of course, is for the red tail proposal, and in the community park context, the current general plan allows for a concession stand, so if they had a snack bar, something supporting some of their camping use, you might say that would be okay. You recall they had some sports fields. The sports fields could work. If they had a common picnic area or individual picnic areas, you can make the case those could work. Or small sports fields, if they had bocce ball or they had some pickleball courts, you can make the case they work within the current zoning. What doesn't work is one of their primary uses, the camping use, the eating and drinking establishments, as I mentioned. We already have some out there today, but by strictly speaking, the zoning application, they're not allowed. Dancing and live entertainment, again, those are uses that were envisioned in 2 of the 3 proposals. So you would have to resolve those if you were to move forward with those uses. So in conclusion, as we've talked about a little, the council in April directed that we really put a stop to both discussions, the Putuidem Village Community Park as well as the red tail acquisition concept, and open them up to the public for input. And that's why we're here tonight. And with that, I'll turn it back to Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Seth.
That was really a test. If you could stay here during all of that, you get to participate in the meeting. Okay. I know sometimes there's a little bit of we can get glossed over here on some of these technical details, but they're actually super important. If you're okay with this, Mayor, I can give like a 60-second recap in layman's terms of what, at least in my mind, kind of recapping that. What happened is in 1990, okay, we buy this land and we put a general plan and a zoning designation on it with largely the intent that we were going to build soccer fields there. Okay, so that's what the general plan says. That's what the zoning plan underneath says. Over the decades, we didn't improve those. We didn't have the money to improve those fields at the time. And over the decades since then, the community's vision about what should be out on that property has shifted and migrated over time. So you see some of these council policy documents or some later general plan uses talking about parks where it shifts away from all soccer fields, all big, huge multi-team player fields to some of these council policy statements or parks and rec statements that deal with some of the camping issues and some of these other things, and then you get some more that are even more passive, which is just trails or orchards or things like that. Now we got to a point where we were ready to move forward on some of these uses. The previous council had petitioned for some of these proposals. We reviewed them, and we had just to be really frankly, and I don't want to be offensive, but it's part of our decision-making process, we had a prominent member of the community who had sued the city in the past, threaten a lawsuit if this wasn't done the way he felt it should be done, and exposing some of these kind of legal exposures, if I can be clear, about the fact that the general plan doesn't match the zoning plan in every way, that we are selling beer and wine out there, but the general plan precludes that or the zoning precludes that. And so even though we knew what we wanted to do in terms of Putuidem Village, I think as a council, arguably that doesn't fit with the zoning and the general plan. And so we wanted to reset these, make sure that they matched up and so that we had a legally defendable position to move forward with. And in doing that, wanted to make sure, hey, if we're going to do this, if we're going to redo the zoning and that sort of thing, why don't we look at the entire property and talk to the community and say, if we're going to redo the zoning, let's make sure we speak to the things that we want to eventually put out there, even if we can't afford to do them now. And if that's soccer fields, great. If it's open space, great. If it's camping, great. Or what we could really kind of get input from the community to make sure that what we're moving forward with is consistent with what the community wants and is legally defendable once we decide to do it. Okay? So having said that, go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you. We have Lindsay here and Matisse here, and they're going to watch out for questions and comments. And again, clarifications of anything, questions, observations, and what you think you'd like to see out in open space, whatever's on your mind. You want to wave down Lindsay or Matisse, and we'll start some questions. So, lady was first.
After after we finish giving you our input about the various things that we might like to or not like to see on the open space, it would be helpful to understand how the city, what method the city is going to use to reconcile those new uses on that land. Will you use a specific plan? Are you going to change is it a general plan amendment? What will the mechanism be that will incorporate all the things you decide we want there into one program?
If you want.
Yeah. So there'd be some work ahead of us in that situation. You want to add a little color?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. I think the answer is yet to be determined. So first, staff will be seeking policy direction from the City Council on the uses that the council would like to see, and then staff would provide some options and maybe a recommendation for the appropriate mechanism to implement that, whether that would be a general plan amendment or a specific plan. There are options available, but it really starts initially with the policy direction.
And I would add, whatever took place would be a very, very thorough process with public hearings, a lot of opportunity for input, and then we'd also have to be mindful of Measure X too. So there'd be a lot of work, and it'd be a very public process.
And for those of you who don't speak municipal code, a specific plan is a custom zone. So we mentioned that we have 8 general plan designations just in open space. So community park, open space recreational, natural open space, passive, all these different things. And what a specific plan would allow you to do, and that would fit underneath our general plan community park, is to go in and create a zone that's specific to this area. So we could actually mix and match some of the zones and create something that would be legally conforming, but might take bits and pieces of different zones, and a specific plan would theoretically allow you to do that. That's a good question.
Dick Paulson, San Juan resident. I know we're talking about the Northwest open space, but will council and staff be looking at all of our open space? We have open space that is owned by private parties. We have open space that is owned by the city. And I am guessing, to keep us out of litigation problems in the future, you're going to look at all of that zoning and make it consistent so that we don't run into legal problems. Our next project may be another part of the city that is open space. How does Measure X come into all these decisions? And can we be looking at all of our open space general master zoning so we don't run into these same problems 5 years from now? And you guys won't be on council 5 years from now, but I'm hoping that our council, who I think is great, is going to solve these issues so we don't see it in the future. And by the way, one other, just on Northwest open space, we have made promises to our Native Americans. Let's keep those promises.
Thank you. I would just suggest that the process, the workshops, the reaching out to the community, the sense of obligation to hear from the community is probably as intense as it is, because everybody sitting in this room, along with thousands of other residents, own this land and have either paid through it through their tax bills, or have paid a price for their new home that reflect what the previous owner had passed and the amenities that go along with the home, which is this tiny bit of open space that they're a bit owner in. So there's a tremendous sense of obligation here for the publicly owned parcels to hear from the public. As far as the connection to parcels that are privately owned that may have some of the same ambiguity around the open space, there might be things we learn from the process that we can apply to that. But I don't know that it would be caught up in this specific process over the next few months as we sort that out. But the point is very well taken. We have a lot of open space in the city, both owned by the public and owned by individuals, and there are certainly some issues out there that we have to be mindful of and be thoughtful and thorough with.
I mean, just to be clear, though, Mr. Paulson, it's not our intention right now. These workshops are not setting out an effort to rezone or correct zoning conflicts with all of the open space parcels in the city. We're really focused on the Northwest open space. There might be processes that we develop and learn here that we can use in other parts of the city, but we're not trying to do a comprehensive rezone of the city's open space.
Thank you, gentlemen, for hosting this event. If we do a specific plan that allows for the various and sundry recreational uses, including camping, do you feel that our staff and others might consider camping to be clamping, which to me should be more of a commercial zoning?
So it's not inconceivable you'd get different answers. Mayor Pro Tem and myself haven't taken the exact same approach to this issue. What we do share is the determination to hear as much as possible from the public, for sure. That's our intent. Whether it's commercial, camping, for profit, to me is different than camping for the enjoyment of the residents. And so we just have to see how that unfolds. But I get your point, and we'll see what the future holds with that. But I get your point.
Yeah, and I think this is an important, because the word commercial has been used as almost anathema to open space. Okay, that if there's commercial, if there's someone making money, that in some way that's a breach of a public promise to open space. And I want to try to separate that, at least in my mind. And again, the mayor and I aren't eye to eye on every single one of these issues, but I think we want to be a little bit careful. To your point, Dick, a little bit earlier, is that if we stay here on this, if we stay on the Northwest open space, that we're not going to allow an entity to collect money or make money on city-owned open space. We need to be a little bit careful, because we're currently in a lease with city-owned open space on the riding park, which is exactly that, which is a commercial venture that people, I think, really value and think is great. I think that if your personal taste is that you're opposed to the glamping concept, I think that's okay, and I think you should express that, but it's okay to express that and decide as a community that that's not what we want or that's what we want, without standing up and saying or adopting as a policy position that we're not going to allow anybody to collect money, or saying it has to be a nonprofit versus a for-profit, because that can obviously get really cute too. I think my preference would be to really focus on the uses that you guys feel are consistent and appropriate with what you'd like to see out there for yourselves and your families and your neighbors. And whether it's commercial or non-commercial, I mean, the golf course where we had this great phenomenal fundraiser for the veterans today, guess what that is? That's a commercial venture on open space, right? So we really need to be careful about using these buzzwords as if they're good or bad. Let's focus on the uses themselves, and if we like them or we don't like them, I think that's okay, but I wouldn't try to box them into certain words to categorically preclude something from happening. I don't have the microphones to hand out, so what you want to be looking at, Lindsay, could you raise your hand, and then Matisse? So yeah, those are the people you want to be flagging down, and they'll bring you a microphone.
Excuse me, last time I was here, I asked how big the park was going to be. Putuidem Village also, but you guys said it was 37 acres for the entire area here. And Putuidem Village was only going to be 1.2 acres, which I consider way too small. And you have even a dog park here in town that's 2.5 times that big, right in that same area. And you talked about costs. In this village, you could put native plants like jucus and deergrass, yucca, and sumac, and other plants that are very cost-effective, they're drought-resistant, didn't take a lot of water, and it would represent the tribe and the items they used for baskets and other things. I think you need to increase the size of this park, this village.
Okay, so that's a great comment. I want to flag something that just happened, because it's important, and maybe we're here in this meeting and that's okay too. This is less of a question and more of a comment, and what I'm hearing you say is, you guys like Putuidem Village, that's great. I think that Putuidem Village should be increased in size.
Yes.
So heard that comment. Does anyone else have, before we move into the kind of hardcore comments in terms of what else do we want to see there besides the village, does anyone else have any questions related to kind of how we got here, what we're doing? Because if we're done with that, then I think it's okay to move into these ideas, but if not, as best we can, I'd like to get the questions answered before we go into the suggestions.
Well, yeah, I think what I'm hearing from you is that there are some inconsistencies, but to be honest, no one is really objecting to the Putuidem Village. What I think we're objecting to is the proposal by Redtail for glamping, and I have no problem with some commercial uses. The equestrian park was to enhance our equestrian usage here. The camping and glamping, that is, in fact, a large commercial development. And I think that's the distinction. So I don't understand why we've put the Putuidem Village on hold whenever there really aren't problems with the zoning. No one, even with threatened lawsuits, no one is talking about a lawsuit against Putuidem Village for its zoning. The problem is the red tail.
So I'm going to turn that comment into a question so that you're in conformance and we're smiling together, okay? Let me see if I can, and cut me off when you want, you're running the meeting. I think the question is, if people, and the potential litigant who threatened the lawsuit in the papers was really concerned about the red tail camping proposal, why are we stopping and not moving forward with the Native American village while we sort the rest of that out, okay? And I'll just say this as clearly as I can. When we ran for office, or at least I did, we ran on the idea that we were going to do things right and that we were going to keep the city from getting sued. The last city council in this city cost the city, I mean, how many millions of dollars because they did things that they wanted to do, okay, that weren't in compliance with the laws, okay, or at least were questionable, and they led to very expensive legal settlements, okay? For me, personally, and I can only speak for me, right, to take a few minutes, okay, a few months, if you will, to pause and to get these legally complying so that we're not subject to somebody challenging it, okay, is worth the time to do it right. If for no other reason, then it sets the precedent that as a city council in San Juan Capistrano, we're no longer going to wing it. We can't afford to legally. We're going to take the time to do it right so that we're on legally sound footing. And if that takes a few more months to do it right, I'm more comfortable doing that with my stewardship as a city council rather than just saying, hey, and I think I was clear in our last meeting, I don't think anyone on our city council is saying we don't want the Putuidem Village. I think what we're saying is we'd like to do it right. We'd like to get the zoning right before we move forward with that, and then once we can, we move forward. Thanks.
Hi, Ren Cohen, living here since 1987. I think it's kind of a question, is that I did not hear, I don't think Charlie did not include that at one of the previous council meetings, the council voted 4-1, I think it was, to go ahead with red tail. So I think people need to be reminded of that, and I've been wondering about that as to, you know, that's a vote that's like sitting there, and then you got so much feedback, you turned it around and said, okay, we need to hear what people think. So I think that needs to be clarified tonight. People need to understand it, and I'd like to know what happens with that vote. I know you didn't vote exactly to go ahead with red tail, but you voted for red tail. And so I'd like to know where you are with that. I'd like to know that that vote has been countermanded or reversed, but I don't think you reversed it.
Thank you.
So the vote was to go into an exclusive negotiation and sort through a proposal from red tail. And we put that, as well as the park work that was going on hold once there was the increasing awareness about some of the conflict in the documents and so forth. And then, perhaps in part given the community's reaction to red tail, along with the zoning confusion, we thought, hey, let's slow it down. Let's hear from folks. And that vote is still a good vote, and that process could restart, but there's no guarantee that's going to happen. We just don't know. We'll take the information from these workshops and go back to work as a council and go back to work with staff. And everything we do from there on out, of course, that's a part of the process will be noticed, and you'll be able to follow it.
Yeah, and I would just add to that. I want to clarify something for everybody here, because I think if someone told you that the city council voted for red tail acquisitions, that's just not true. Okay, so bear in mind again that this city council didn't solicit this process. Okay, this city council came in, and a previous city council had gone out and sought bids. All we got to do was receive these 3 finalist bids and evaluate them when they came in. And as staff mentioned earlier today, one of them bailed before the meeting. The large soccer complex didn't even show up, okay? The other one looked like it wasn't going to be financially viable as a standalone, and the only one that we had left to look at any further was Red Tail, and explicitly in that meeting, while the vote that was put before us was technically this exclusive negotiating, the entire city council expressed this. I don't know if it's exclusive negotiating, but we're willing to go and do some more homework. We were presented with conceptual drawings. We didn't understand all the details, and we said, we're willing to look at this further. We want to better understand what this could be, what it couldn't be, could be more of this, could be less of this. And so the city council's willingness to do more due diligence on something that had been proposed, bear in mind that the city requested this proposal. This isn't something that a developer just walked off the street and said, hey, I want to do something with your open space. The previous city council sought these proposals out, and this person responded. There was really only one viable proposal left on the table, and what we voted to do was to look at it further and understand it better. So that's a far cry from saying, didn't your city council vote to do glamping out there? No, not at all, but we do want to understand, because we were hearing from the community, some parts some people liked, some people didn't like at all, and we don't even understand yet with that applicant what parts are key to their proposal, what parts aren't, or how that works.
And just one point of clarification, the previous council, which I was on, was not a unanimous vote. I opposed putting it out to bid at all into this process, as well as progressing with the one entity. But taking politics out of the picture, we're just coming back to the fact that we the people own the land, and we want to hear your ideas tonight. Sir, what I took from your comment was that whatever size the park was, surrounding it with some flowers and some native plants, to me that's sort of a vote for open space as being open. Trails, nature area, maybe residents can go camp on it. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I mean, but the notion that open space for the sake of open space is okay. That's kind of where I put that check mark. And we do want to make sure we hear that from you tonight as well. If you could wave a wand, king or queen for the day, what would you put out there? And let's pretend money's no object too.
I have the microphone next.
They're keeping an eye best they can. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, my name is Adelia Sandoval, and I was part of the Putuidem Village Committee that worked on the plans for a few years. And, but first off, I do want to make a brief comment, and that is I really want to thank you for creating these community events tonight, the last one and this one, so that people could have an opportunity to speak. But also to thank you for going through, even though some of you weren't on the council during the time we were presenting our stuff, to sit and to listen and actually to approve it, and to say, hey, yeah, we really like this. We went through all the commissions, and, they heard our proposals, and they said yes. So, and I'm sorry that we didn't make that really clear last time when we were here to say thank you, because it's very important to do that. When we put this committee together and created the village, the concept of it, the whole point of it was for the community. And I really want people to know that, because it isn't just for us. Actually, it really isn't for us, because, it's a park out there where anyone can go. It was for the community. That was our pure intention, because we wanted people to know that living here, they have a history as well, and that is the history of our people. Because, if you're living here, you got to know, well, who was here before? Everybody's like, they're curious, like, who was here before? What's the history of this place? And this was a perfect example of letting people know about that. And so we are very proud of the work. We were proud of working with the city staff. It was actually a lot of fun, and it was very healing for some of us that we usually squabbled, right? But anyway, my question, then I'll make this part of what we want to do tonight, is how can we as the committee help you? Because I know it now is coming down to words. It's coming down to words and making those words accurate enough to protect the city from being, sued in the future or whatever it is. And, personally, I don't know about all of this other proposals. I know that eventually something will be out there. I think last time I said, but I think you got one word out of me last time, it was spiritual. Because, I am the spiritual person of the tribe. So, of course, I want all of us here to be able to go somewhere and just sit and just listen to the birds and see what it kind of was like hundreds of years ago before, a lot of other people came and changed it and did this and that. So anyway, I want it to be helpful. I want our committee to be helpful to you. What can we do in the present to help you to get the village back on track in the sense of the wording of it? You know, we wanted it to be educational, but apparently that's going to conflict. You know, an open museum out, you know, was suggested perhaps, or whatever, however we want to word it, but we want to make it in a way that's going to work for everyone. So I just wanted to be clear with that tonight.
I love those sentiments. Thank you for expressing them. I appreciate it. I think I liked it particularly how you expressed that the Native American village, while it is for the Native Americans, and I think that it's going to be really enjoyed by that constituency, it's really for the broader community to try to understand a little bit more about that aspect of our shared culture and this land that we're sharing together. I think part of what we're trying to do with these forums is say, okay, if we have that pinned down, and whether it's 1 acre, 3 acres, 5, you know, whatever that is, you've got all of this other land out there, okay? And I think that part of what, at least to me, you know, speaking for myself, I'd like to see is how do we get more people, how do we activate that so that it's not just somebody going out to see a 3-acre site in the middle of a 40-acre site. What else can we do out there? I'm sure you can see and imagine in our downtown right now, there's a synergy between the jewel of the missions and the uses that are immediately around, the basilica, the schools, the restaurants, the trolley, all of those things work very well together. Los Rios Street, and all of those things being within proximity to each other. There's a reason why tourists, schools, and so forth want to come to San Juan Capistrano, and they skip other mission cities. And part of that is the synergy between our wonderful downtown and how those uses speak to each other and interact with each other. And so part of what we want to hear tonight is, okay, if we're doing the Native American village and we've got this land surrounding, and I hear you loud and clear, I think all of us say, there probably wants to be a buffer no matter what else goes on there. You don't want a Native American village next to a commercial building, even a beautiful one like this, you know, that's for public uses. So you do the Native American village, you do this buffer, and then what else? What are those other uses that will get people there that will drive more people to see this Native American village and would be a consistent and synergistic use with that use, so that we can get the best use out of that area that we own as a city. So thanks for your comments.
Okay, I guess I have the microphone. I'm Lee McClendon and my husband Kurt. We've owned our home in San Juan Capistrano since 1994. A specific question that I have is about, I haven't heard it mentioned tonight, is there a legal requirement for this to be put to a vote of the people if there wants to be a change to the permissible uses by whatever it is that you decide to put in there? And if it has to go to a vote of the people, that would be more than just having this kind of a forum, and that it should be very, very clearly distinguishing between the two different projects that are being proposed for that area.
Yeah, so a change of zoning or change of use would require a ballot question. I mean, it would be an advertised ballot. It would be very formal, just like a regular election. It would be expensive, but that was part of Measure X, you know, an acknowledgement that would have to happen. And then the extent of the change and so forth, and there's other things that would go on an evaluation of that. But generally speaking, meaningful change would go to ballot. It would be much different from this. It would be a ballot, you'd get it in the mail, or you'd go to a polling station to vote. It would be a very formal process.
I want to clarify something just on a technical basis about that. Measure X requires a ballot measure if you change a land use. Okay, and the history behind that was, if you guys will probably remember, in town there was some senior housing being proposed on a portion of the golf course on the other side of the creek, and people were upset saying, hang on, if it's open space, we want it to stay open space. But Measure X isn't necessarily triggered if you're moving from one open space land use to another open space land use, because the land use would still be open space. So theoretically, you could imagine that if somebody said, I want to go from golf course to soccer fields, well, that would take you from open space recreational to community park or whatever those kind of designations might be. But since they're both open space land uses, Measure X wouldn't necessarily be triggered. But if we were going to put office buildings out there or houses out there, that would clearly change the underlying land use, and Measure X would be triggered, and it would require a vote of the public.
Back there.
I have a question. Two questions.
Do we have anyone else with a question? Oh, sorry.
Laura Fries, and my questions are, it goes along with the last question, the vote. I'd like to know, just for everyone's edification in this room, how many people in this room voted on the 1990 bond for open space? Good one. Okay, and the second question is, how many people in the room voted for the 2008 Open Space Initiative? Yep, we've got a lot of people in this room who have decided that it was well worth it to put our money out there to protect the character of San Juan Capistrano. And I think it's just like you were saying earlier, Troy, about the soccer fields, and I saw some people going, well, I didn't vote for soccer fields. Open space is different in every person's mind, but I do believe that when we voted to tax ourselves for open space, most of us were thinking of it without asphalt. That's my big thing, without a lot of asphalt. So, thank you.
Matisse.
Thank you. My name is Shelley Barker. I've lived here since '93 in San Juan Capistrano, and I just wanted to thank the mayor and mayor pro tem and the staff for putting this together and all the hard work and behind-the-scenes work. My question is, and the couple next to me were asking this too, I got here a little late, but I did see the information presented. There's a lot of talk about the Putuidem Village and the glamping, but there were a couple other items presented. So in getting the public comments, is there a place on the current city website or else that I could look at those other suggested items? I saw one tonight I didn't know about, which was the vineyards, which included the Putuidem Village and and other items, which looked very interesting, and I had never heard about that particular item, and of course there were a couple other you mentioned.
You getting thirsty, Shelley?
I am.
Okay. Do you guys, Charlie, could you talk a little bit about the website that we put up and where people can find more of these resources?
Yes, so on the city's homepage, there's a link to the Northwest Open Space that provides most of the documents. The city manager and I were just talking. I don't think all the proposals, the 11 proposals, were included. There's a separate agenda item for when we did the initial review, and then of course when we invited the 3 participants. We can link those to it, but we'll have to do that tomorrow. I believe the one included right now is the Red Tail and the Putuidem Village, because those were part of the agenda tonight, but we can add the other ones.
So would the idea be to add all 11, all the original? I mean, there were a couple that were just out there. I mean, one was a big fitness center, 3-story fitness center. But you mean the 3 finalists that we discussed, so to speak? Yeah. Yeah, maybe not a bad idea to give people some visuals, since those sort of came down the home stretch. And the one that was all sports fields would have been shown to you at the public session, but they sensed a lot of anxiety around the 2, and they said, we're going to step away from the process for a while. So. But it gives you an idea. Who's got a microphone? Somebody, okay.
I do. Hi. I'm Carol McIntyre. My husband and I have lived in San Juan for 32 years. My question relates to Measure X, and you spoke a little bit to that, but I'm still a bit fuzzy. I don't know if anybody else is or not. And maybe my question is going to be very direct so that you don't have to read between the lines. But projecting forward, if the City Council decides to go through with zoning that would allow the camping facilities, would Measure X be called into play, and would we get to vote on that?
The city attorney has opined on that and said that Measure X would not be required if we were to do another open space use.
So another open space use would be the camping. Mm-hmm. All right. So how do we as citizens make our voices heard, those of us that really feel that is just an abhorrent and audacious use of what we intended open space to be when those of us voted for it multiple times? How do we best make our voices known to the City Council?
I would go to an open space forum. I would grab a microphone. I would sit in the 3rd row right in front of the mayor pro tem, and I would express my opinion.
Okay. Thank you.
And just to be clear, not everybody who's reviewed it is of the same opinion.
I understand. And I don't think all the citizens are of the same opinion as well.
Same opinion as to whether Measure X would be required.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, I'm Dennis Draper, 40-year resident of San Juan Capistrano, and we were very involved in the original open space vote, and the people voted for open space. My problem right now is the city is directing the city attorney to go around the will of the people and find a way that you can do the glamping. I don't think that you should be going in that direction, and I think you're going to come up a lot of opposition if you do that. That's what I've got.
Okay, so I'm taking part in this and have been a part of it in good faith. I didn't vote for it, so I'm certainly not looking to orchestrate something with the city attorney that pulls a fast one on anybody. And my gut feeling is my colleagues aren't either. I think a process unfolded that took some people by surprise in terms of just how much ambiguity there is around our open space and the importance of open space to the residents who own it. We know it's sacrosanct, and this process has unfolded. I think we'll all do best to continue to move along through the process in good faith. I understand your angst, Dennis. But that my feeling is we're moving along here in good faith. There's going to be some differences of opinion, right? I mean, Troy and I have some differences of opinion. Staff and a council member could have some differences of opinion. That's, that's the sausage making. But I think the broader initiative here, which is to hear from everybody, understand that we're all landowners in this, and try to get a real good sense and a pulse from people on this, is a genuine effort.
I'm Marlene Draper, and I was chairman of San Juan, San Juan Citizens for Open Space, there we go, in 1990. First, as far as Measure X, I would encourage everyone to read the op-ed by Mark Nielsen, who does have a very, very different opinion and who was on the council. But I do have a question. In 1990, after we passed the bond, there were several months of workshops. The city hired individuals to come in, lead these workshops, to be able to get from the residents, the people who owned the land, what uses they wanted to see on the property. Has anyone looked at those? Because that was tons of effort. And I've seen them. It's open space. So I think the citizens pretty much said back then what we wanted to see. So I would encourage you to see if the city still has those records. Someone has to.
Some records the city still has, some they don't. I think that, so I want to respond in a couple of ways. So yes, we're looking at everything that we can find from that period of time. But in terms of formal documents, it still has, you saw two of them tonight, okay? One is we changed the general plan and the zoning to allow for large-scale sports fields. Okay, so that gives you some flavor of what the city council was thinking in the early 1990s when they did this. They could have called it natural open space. They could have called it open space recreational. They could have gone through any of the other 7 land use designations, and they chose community park for these, which is generally focused on large sports fields. You saw the council policy statement that allowed for large group uses, including overnight camping, which was also done within just a few years of acquiring the property. I think that it's... Hang on just a second, okay? It was overnight camping. All I'm doing is reading the documents, but this is the point, but this is, Marlene, let me finish, okay? Is, to me, it's really, frankly, not as relevant as what the group thinks today. And this is what I mean. If we all find out and we go find the document that says everybody wanted the circus to be there in 1991, it doesn't mean that we're obligated to put the circus there today. If everybody, let me finish, okay? If everybody wanted that back then, and the general plan says they wanted, a big community park out there, but now we've decided that we want a Native American village, we as a city, we as a city council have the ability to say, you know what, we don't want soccer fields exclusively out there. We want something that the community park land use designation doesn't allow for, which is this passive park Native American village. We want that. It's okay for us to change our minds over several decades, but we have gone to a great effort to go back and try to historically look and say, what was it that people thought they were going to get when we did it? Part of the problem is, if you go around this room and all of you guys who voted for it, and I've done the best I can to talk to all of the people. My in-laws lived here in 1990. I remember sitting at their kitchen table in 1990 talking about this, okay, and what they thought was going to go out there. But if you talk to the different people in town, they heard what they wanted out there when they were told to vote for this, and some people saw it as natural open space. Some people were told it was going to be sports fields. Some people were told it was going to be swimming pools. Some people were told all of these different things. Different people had different opinions. But the point right now is really saying, we want to know what you guys want today. We want to know what you guys want right now, not necessarily what somebody wanted, 30 plus years ago. And Mr. Draper, I want to respond to what you said, because as a volunteer, okay, or I guess I'm a paid professional to some degree, okay. Just because people disagree, okay, and I don't even know that we do disagree with you, to be frank, nobody on the city council, nobody on the staff is directing the city attorney to work around law. I've been in all of those meetings, the open session and the closed sessions, and what you have is you have a group of individuals trying to do the right thing for their constituents, okay? No one's trying to work around anything, no one's trying to force an end to something. Okay, and those, it doesn't need to be this way. We're sitting here trying to understand and hear what you guys want. There's no malintent here among any members of the city council or the staff. We're just trying to do what's right by you guys. Okay, please, Marlene. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, thanks. My intent, Troy, was simply to say, bring into the mix the history of what had happened. Because I agree, things evolve, things change over 30 years. However, it is important to bring all factors in, and those individuals that worked in the very beginning to plan what they thought would be right should be a part of the consideration.
Absolutely.
Not an
and if you have
part.
access to those documents, Marlene, we want them all, because we've looked and tried to find them all.
And I think about 5 years ago, I tossed them.
So did most people. So we've done as best a job as we could, I think, to try to identify all the original documents that we can.
Thank you.
Hello there. My name is Steve Ray. I have to say, first of all, I am not a resident of the city of San Juan Capistrano.
As long as you buy dinner here tonight, you're okay.
Well, I have for years wanted to be. It's just you're so far away from where I normally work. It was convenient to live elsewhere. But I've admired this city for a long time and been very interested in what's happening here, and I have many friends here. I just wanted to offer some observations that I've been making both before this meeting and at this meeting, based upon the fact that for 40 years I have been pretty much known as an open space advocate. I'm the executive director of the Banning Ranch Conservancy, who fought for 20 years to stop the development of Banning Ranch and keep it as open space. Before that, I was involved in saving the Bolsa Chica, so I have kind of a history of this. But on the opposite side, I served as a planning commission chair in Huntington Beach, so I understand zones and codes and general plans and things like that. So what I've heard tonight, I want to talk about a couple things. One is the kind of the tonality that I hear. First of all, I watched the presentation tonight, and there were slight differences in the tonality. When we were talking about the village project, it was pointed out in some stronger tonality that there were a couple issues that did not comport with the zoning codes, being the passive open space and educational plans. First of all, I have never ever seen a zoning code for city open space or park that excluded passive recreation uses or education opportunities in a public park. So I don't know where you came up with that definition of a park, but that's very problematic. But it was emphasized that that was a serious problem. By the same token, the Red Tail project, there were even more issues that were not allowed under the codes for that, but that was kind of passed over very quickly. So there was a tonality difference there. Also, the factor of cost, the $2.1 million for that, and the $60,000 to $80,000 maintenance each year. There was a real strong emphasis put on that. And I know cities and city councils love to turn every ounce of land pretty much into some revenue-generating type of operation. And so the Red Tail project, the emphasis there was how much money it was going to be bringing in. I hear from the audience tonight, many of these people may not care a whole lot about the revenue-generating aspect of this land. They have a much greater interest in it providing a place for them to go to, whether it's to recreate or whether it's just to reflect, like Adelia Sandoval here sees. There are these kind of uses that provide those kind of opportunities for people. And this land isn't always about the money and about the revenue generating. And so I would, and I know you're here listening tonight, and I appreciate that from both of you. It's just that I think the tonality in the room tonight suggests that there is a serious concern with this Red Tail acquisition, and the fact that you voted to enter into an exclusive negotiating agreement with Banning Ranch. The City Council of Newport Beach did that, and they wouldn't talk to anybody else about anything else because of that exclusiveness of the negotiating process. Yeah. So that made it very difficult, and somehow, if you're going to be open to the public and move in a different direction, you need to find a way to back away from that.
Yeah, so
thank you.
I think your observation is I think your observation is probably really accurate. I think that if we've brushed over the degree to which the glamping proposed use does not conform with the land use general plan, it's because it so obviously does not. Okay, so let me just make sure that everybody understands here that nobody on the city council or the staff thinks that the Red Tail proposal as drawn right now conforms with the community park land use designation. And I think that Mr. View made a good point of saying that. I think we didn't spend a lot of time talking about it because there's conflict about whether we want it at all, and it very clearly does not comply in its primary use as glamping with the community use zoning that's currently on the property right now. So maybe it's just because among us on this side of the room, that's a foregone conclusion. I think what's frustrating is a lot of people in the community want the Native American village, but it's very difficult to argue that use was, to your point, maybe the zoning code is messed up and what sort of a ridiculous community park doesn't allow for a passive educational use. That's totally fair. Nobody in this room wrote that. But we're required to abide by the laws that are written in the city, and we can change those. And I think that's a little bit what we're talking about doing here tonight. So I think that's probably why some of the focus has been more on how the Putuidem Village doesn't comply, because we want to make sure that it does. Where the other, I think everybody understands that if there was going to be a glamping use out there, there'd very clearly have to be a rewriting of the laws. And so I think that's maybe why you're seeing one focus over the other.
Hello, Lynn Ramirez. Have you done a study on what the impact's going to be on our roads, especially Camino Cap? It's already really bad. And our parking lots with these people bringing their trailers and spending the night in the parking, Ralph's or Trader Joe's. Have you done that? Have you figured out what's going to happen?
Yeah, we're not that far in the process. That would be an exhaustive study, but we're not that far in the process.
I would suggest you put another road in because it's not a good situation now.
Yeah, so that's just for, if somebody here decided, hey, we want to go with option B, option A, option 42, whatever it is, nothing would be approved until those comprehensive environmental studies were completed, not just traffic, but any number of studies. But it does bring up a point which kind of triggers in my mind. You brought up a second point, which I think is, I want everybody to reflect on this because I think it was actually really prudent and kind of thoughtful. But he said, you know what, most people in town, when they think of different uses in town, how many people other than the people on the city staff and the city council are going, I've got a great use for that land over there because it'll generate a lot of money for the city. I've never heard that one time, okay? I've lived here a long time. If you ask somebody, what do you think that we should do with this piece of property over here? Almost consistently, not 100% of the time, but almost everybody says, I'd like it to be a park. Empty parcel anywhere near my house. I know what I want there. I want it to be a park. Okay? Most people in the community don't say, I've got a really great idea for this empty parcel over here. It could be a high-tax generating retail center. I've never heard anybody say that. But you know what I have heard a lot since I was elected to the city council just a few months ago? Why haven't you paved my roads? Why haven't you paved my streets? Okay, and so understand that nobody up here is saying, hey, let's use open space for this, open space for that, but if we made our decisions only based on when the constituents came and told us, please put a high tax generating use on that parcel over there, we wouldn't have any high tax generating uses in the city. We'd have a whole bunch of parks that we couldn't afford to mow. So there are some balances and trade-offs. I'm not suggesting that anybody wants to necessarily put a commercial type use there or not, but at the end of the day, somebody does have to sit back and say, even though everybody would like the entire city to be parks, you guys also want the streets paved, the lights working, the sheriff's paid for, and you want people to respond when you call. Those things do require money, and so there are some trade-offs that you've asked us to make as your elected officials. I hope it doesn't make us come across like, ambitious, pro-business, all we care about is money, but you have given us the stewardship to pay the bills. So.
Robert Hagstrom. I'm a resident of San Juan Capistrano since 1992. The thing that drew Susan and I to San Juan Capistrano was the peaceful feel of the city. When you come in from the north, it looks like you're in the country as soon as you get in here at night. And I want to keep that feeling when you come into the San Juan Capistrano from the north at night. It feels like we're in a countryside. And I'm also interested in that every time they have a vote to get money to buy open space, they say, we're going to have a swimming pool for you. And of course, yeah, I'm going to vote for that, but never get a swimming pool. But I would also like to say that if we do the village, I'd like that to be a facility that I would bring guests to in the daytime, and somehow we have to get the funding to keep the vandals out at night.
And you want a swimming pool there. Got it.
Hi, Gail Prothero, San Juan resident. Has the city or staff members or any of the council members assessed the northwest open space parcel for eligibility for Prop 68 statewide park program eligibility?
For a statewide park program?
Yeah, under Prop 68, the statewide park program provides funding for local parks. Has the northwest open space parcel been assessed for whether it's eligible or not?
I'm going to ask staff if we have any history of exploring that with any of our open space.
We've looked at some grant opportunities, but nothing so far that we think this particular project would qualify for.
Did you get that? It's not quite a specific
I think the answer is we're going to go look at that. Prop 68. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, so I just have the open space master plan in front of me, and looking at what open space is defined as, one of the definitions includes that it's an area of outstanding scenic, aesthetic, historic, and cultural values. And then just looking at a screenshot that I took from the slideshow today, the zoning challenges related to proposed uses for the Putuidem Village. In what the zoning allows for and doesn't allow for, cultural and historic value wasn't included. So do you guys believe that the culture and historic value is not something that pertains to the Putuidem Village, or why was it not included?
I love that you asked that question. It's a great question. There's a disconnect not only between our general plan and our zoning as it relates to this property, but please bear in mind that the mayor and I didn't write those definitions, okay? And so the fact that we have really old city documents that bar certain uses, they might be uses that we very much feel are appropriate, and I think that we've spoken publicly and taken votes about how we feel about that. No, it's not a question of what we want versus what we're not allowed to do there, or what we aren't allowing there, as much as our commitment to say, hey, this is what we want, and we want to make sure that the zoning gets changed so that it's legally supportive of what we'd like to see there. I don't think anybody in the city looks at the Putuidem Village concepts and say that's not consistent with historical or it wouldn't be a good fit for that space. I think people are generally very supportive. We just want to make sure the laws match that when we go through the approval process.
You sure? Okay. So I was just looking at the zoning records of everything how the zonings have been changed previously, and there have been over 24 of those, of how when something wanted to be implemented, we would just change the zoning to have that done. So why hasn't that been done for the Putuidem Village, or would that be taken into consideration to do that?
Okay. Did everybody get that question? Okay. Her question is, you guys can change the zoning. Why don't you just change the zoning to allow for the Putuidem Village? That's why we're here tonight. Okay? Because if we're going to change the zoning on that parcel and we know part of what we want out there, right, it doesn't make sense to change the zoning out there 6 or 7 times, right? What we'd like to do is say, okay, if we're going to change the zoning on this big parcel, which someone said 38 acres, that's probably usable. It's closer to 60 or 70 acres in terms of overall. We want to zone it all at the same time. Maybe a specific plan, the Planning Commission recommended, was a really good idea, and we could really custom craft this thing, create a plan that not only allows for the Putuidem Village, but allows for consistent uses around the Putuidem Village, so that you're not worried when Brian and I get thrown off of the council, right, that someone else comes and says, now we're going to put this here, and they're totally inconsistent. We can put a zone out there where everything kind of speaks to each other and looks really well together all at one time. That's why we kind of want to understand what everybody wants around that village so that it fits. You're welcome.
Just a comment, please. Tom Rebar, San Juan Capistrano resident. I'm a former council member. One of the things my council and Council Member Freese's council discussed was with the St. Margaret's general plan, which we did for them, and they turned around and bought Kathy Holman's stables. One of the things we discussed was the possibility of moving Kathy Holman up there and giving her 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 acres of that property. The equestrian nature is very important to this community. It provides us with a lot of other things, even if you aren't an equestrian. In another suggested comment, I don't personally see discrepancy with the Native American village in today as it's presented this evening. I think that it is certainly in keeping with the intent of the 1990 bond, which put this land in possession of our residents. Another suggestion would be, I've taken a lot of people out there in the last 2 months as part of the educational process opposing the glamping thing, and I've seen so much out there, particularly with the flowers. One Saturday afternoon, there was 90 cars in that lot, and there was a wedding going on. And all the seniors were out there with their tuxedos shooting their senior pictures. The other day there was 45 people out there. I think every photographer in the county has been using that. But aside from that, there was something interesting because there was some people on bicycles that came across the freeway and they went down the trail. Now there's 2 trails there, as you gentlemen know. And the first trail takes you to the lower section, and then it takes you down where people tippy-toe across the creek over by the waterfalls. And I don't know how that guy got across there, unless he worked his way back up to the upper ground, and then he went across the railroad tracks in order to get to his home, which was probably in the Capistrano Villas. So, 2, you asked for some suggestions on what we'd like to see there tonight. Would be a crossing at the creek. We've talked about it for years. 2, I'd like to see some connectivity on those 2 trails. It's really funny because you go down the trail, you turn right, and the trail stops at the railroad tracks. And you sit there and scratch your head. Well, when we walk it, we walk down the tracks and then we walk back in through the weeds and the growth. The other trail just goes down to the creek down by the waterfalls, and that trail should just, all we got to do is get a blade out there and just blade back up on the hill so people can go there and do the quarter-mile circulation. They can do it on the lower trail and they can do it on the upper trail, and that's a simple D8 carving the trail out, just a definition on the trail. And by the way, the lower trail's all eroded out there. It's a little bit of a hazard. It needs to be re-scraped. But so 3 things. 1, potential Kathy Holman when she gets booted, and she's the only equestrian facility in this town that promotes the Western way, and she also does a lot of work with the handicapped. So 1, that's 1. 2, is a crossing, and I know that that's expensive. And 3 would be just simple connectivity of the walking path there. It's amazing how many people go out there that we've seen with this opposition group that wants to get out there and learn more about the Northwest. Thank you.
Thank you,
gentlemen.
Tom. So actually what's interesting, and because it's wrapped in a lot of the angst about commercial camping and some of the past history, and still this sort of fear that the park may not occur or come to be, it's still like pulling teeth, but we are starting to hear some things and get some suggestions. We're hearing somebody talk about how important it is to drive through at night and feel that peace and darkness. We've had commentary that speaks to just the precious nature of open space and plants. We're hearing about equestrian stabling. We all know that we got beat up and pounded on a very disingenuous lawsuit that makes it a little bit more precarious going forward, perhaps to have stables near waters, natural waterways. So it's entirely logical and appropriate to think about whether or not there'd be some discussion about stabling over there. And I think Tom Rebar also suggested that he grab a John Deere anytime and carve out a path up over the hillside there, which I thought was terrific. We're going to make those arrangements. But he actually spoke to the connectivity. So effectively saying, hey, what we've got and what's fairly passive, why can't we make it a little bit more user-friendly? And I've heard that before, too. So hang in there, because the ideas, we're fleshing the ideas out, and it's good for all of us. Who's our next question out there with the mic?
Just one real quick comment on that last one, which I think a lot of people agree with, is the equestrian uses are also a use which are currently explicitly prohibited on the Northwest open space and would require us to correct zoning and in order to allow for something like Kathy's Stables to go out there.
Boo.
I'm just
horses.
No.
No, I understand. Just pointing it out.
My name is Cody Martin. I'm here representing myself as a private citizen. I am not here necessarily supporting red tail or opposing it, but what I'm really here for is to support the process. I think here in our city, we have a tendency for all things, not just development, just laws that are passed here in general. People always take a side and instantly jump to conclusions about what the residents are thinking. And we always try to pick a side, and we try to make one side a louder voice. But if we always did that, we might not have had River Street, which was just a huge big win. We may not have had J. Sarah been built. There's some conflicting things with the open space about that. I think we just need to realize that our council is trying to do the right thing. Red tail might not be what we should put there, but I think we just need to listen and support the process. But shutting the process down without really looking into what's the right thing isn't what we should be doing, I think. So I really think we should just take a slowed down approach, see what the community wants. Maybe it's red tail, maybe it's nothing. But I think the wrong answer is just to instantly say no to everything, because if we did that, we might not have had River Street. We may not have had J. Sarah High School. There's a lot of great things in our city that if we just listened to a portion of the community that said no right away, we might not have ever got that. So that's just what I'd like to say.
It's a great point.
I have a general comment. I just wrote this down, but I believe the Putuidem Village project should proceed immediately. And the balance of the Northwest open space should be a nature preserve with walking trails, showcasing native habitat for everybody to enjoy. Building a glamping park is an insult to Native Americans and San Juan history, and a disrespectful desecration of historic and native land. Do we have to build on every single land in San Juan?
Thank you. Next speaker.
Okay, hi. I'm Chairwoman Romero of the One Band, the Mission Indians of Hashima Nation. I am a resident of Capistrano, and my family's been here for over 12,000 years. So I want to thank you both for having the second open forum. The last time we had it, I know that there was, I think Mayor Pro Tem had said, let's keep the questions in the first half and then comments in the second half. So I complied. And then halfway through the second half, it was, if you've already spoken tonight, you don't get to speak again. So I'm going to take this opportunity to ask questions and comment. My first question is, after the last gathering or community meeting, what was your personal takeaway as far as what you thought the community wanted that night?
For me, I saw very widespread support for the Putuidem Park. And my sense was that there wasn't great support for commercial operation of any kind.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem?
I was disappointed in the last meeting, if I'm speaking honestly, and I can get booed after this, but I think in part because we spent a lot of time talking about how important it was to build the Native American village, and it was almost felt a little bit antagonistic, as if there wasn't somebody here in the room who already wanted that, and we'd already publicly gone on record, where really what we're trying to do is try to understand what we're doing for the balance of that site, and it really felt really, really difficult to say, okay, what else? What else? And it felt like we really just couldn't get feedback, and we kept hearing, you're not hearing us, we want the Native American village, and to me that's a foregone conclusion, and we're really trying to find out what other uses fit really well with that out there, and so I'm hoping that we continue to hear. I think we've got some really good, I think the mayor did a very nice job a few minutes ago of summarizing some of the input we're hearing about the broader site out there, and I would like to continue to hear some thoughts of what else. So we've got the Putuidem Village. What else do you guys want to see out there? Because it's not going to be a 40, just maybe speak a little bit directly. If it's a $2 to $3 million park on 2 to 3 acres, it's not going to be a 40-acre Putuidem Village. Okay, so what else do you guys want to see out there that you think would work well? And I would like to hear more of that.
I appreciate that, because Mr. Ray brought up some great points, and that was the fact that the tonality of the message sometimes gets perceived as adversarial, or like you mentioned, even confrontational. But, so here we are again, and there's still open soccer fields out here with nobody on them. It hasn't changed, and this is the second time. The last time we had the meeting, you had said, well, let's have another meeting because there's a lot of people that couldn't make it tonight, so they'll be here possibly next time. There's less people here this time. So my comments that I would like to share with you are, A, I really appreciate our Native brothers and sisters that are here in support of us tonight, but as a leader of our city, it is imperative that you call the park in a Hashman Park, not a Native American park. It's not dedicated to the Yurok. It's not dedicated to the Apache. It is the birthplace of our tribe, which I'm not sure if you say Native American because you can't pronounce a Hashman, but that tonality to us is very offensive. You're not talking about any other place in Orange County. You're talking about where we started. It's not a Native American park or site. It's an Hashman park. It's an Hashman site. So I don't know if you want me to help you learn how to say it. I'd be more than willing to do that. But it is a real affront when you say a Native American park when you're talking about the Hashman people and our birthplace. So that doesn't lend to a collaborative spirit. That doesn't help us be on the same page and work as a team. Can you see what I'm trying to say?
I understand your position.
Okay, and your comment to that, your feedback to that?
I understand what you're saying.
Okay. But you have no desire to recognize that the Hashman people were the first people here, and that's really what speaks to all the tourism that you get, and that's really why the kids choose the Jewel of the Mission, because it is the Hashman people that are here, that built the mission, that are still here, that are here for the children to come and talk to, that are here to celebrate on that land. Overwhelming, again, tonight, everybody is here has said, well, we're in support of the village. But you guys keep saying, but what else is there? There isn't anything else. That's the overwhelming message that keeps being conveyed. But you guys keep saying, but there has to be something else. Well, what else is there? Is there possibility? We are saying overwhelmingly, open village. Now, I get that you're saying it can't just be a little tiny village and have all this area. Okay, that's great. We're open to equestrian parks. We're open to connecting trails. We're open to all of that. But when you come at us and in an adversarial tone, it makes it difficult for us to be on the same page.
I'm sorry that you feel like we've been adversarial tonight. That wasn't our intent.
Well, that's kind of what you said happened at the last meeting, so I was just dovetailing off of that. Yeah, that wasn't my comment. So, again, Mayor Pro Tem, I don't stand here and use words that could possibly be offensive to you in your position as a leader of the city. I would appreciate it if you would address our people as a Hoshiman. I think that's a fair exchange. And I appreciate Cody's remarks as well, because he also ran for office and came and talked with the tribe and offered his input. Absolutely. We're not going to get anywhere if we can't come to a common ground. You know, everybody in here keeps saying the same message. We're in support of the park. We're in support of the park. So are you guys just not willing to accept that that's all there is? That's a question.
Well, I'm going to jump in because you said you guys.
I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm in the habit of talking about the Putuidem Village, so I'm not as focused on the Hoshiman, so I always talk about the village. But anyways, we do want to talk in terms that are most enthusiastic and supportive to you, I'm sure. You mentioned that fewer people here. There are some new faces tonight, which is great,
yes.
and that's what we want, broader round of feedback. And I don't think there's any questioning that there's been, and over both meetings, a lot of people that seem to be saying, enough already, let's just get this park done. You know, this has been decided for in the past. Well,
I think at the last meeting, there was a young lady in the back that had a really great comment, and that was, let's do this in phases. Let's start with the first phase, which is the park, and then see where it goes from there. I thought that was an excellent thing to contribute. I didn't really hear a whole lot of feedback from either one of you with regards to that. So.
Well, remember now, we're in intake mode. So I thought it was a great suggestion, but we're in intake mode. So if we're just taking it all in, and this is being recorded, and there'll be notes taken, and we'll talk about it as a full council, and so we're not going to comment on any suggestion. We may wrap a few things up and put on a bow on it later tonight, with some recap, but I don't think there's been nothing suggested or discussed tonight that's off the wall, to my way of thinking. I mean, they've all been very thoughtful. It's all been very thoughtful feedback. And
yeah, I think my concern is, and I think the people that I represent, our concern is that you're going to continue to have open forums until you hear suggestions that you want to hear.
That's not true.
The message.
No, that's not true. No.
I understand. I appreciate you clarifying that, because that is what we're hearing.
Yeah. No, you've heard me say that it's unfortunate that the park is kind of caught up in this. So nobody's talked about commercial stabling over there. And so, the question to me is like, wow, great. I'm glad that came up, and the connectivity of the trails has come up before. But so, I mean, there's new things coming up. It's great. I think it's worthwhile. We're all still here. There's still more cookies, and the camera's still running. So let's keep at it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Mayor Pro Tem. My name is Jim Adam. I've been a resident for a long time. I think I probably live closest to Northwest Open Space. Me and my family, friends, there's probably about 30 residents. We live right next to it. So I probably know more about this than most people. For about 3 years, I've been working on a project for Northwest Open Space. No disrespect to the Putuidem Village or the Hoshiman, I'm sorry, I hope I pronounced that right. 100% agree that needs to be built as soon as possible. But I don't feel at all, Mayor Pro Tem, that you've been rude or anything else, but only listening and trying to figure out what's going on. So everybody misses all the points that are important. Number one, the zoning, okay? So we have the Eastern Riding Park that's zoned open space. Am I correct? Or
land use designation is open space on the riding park.
Open space, okay. So now we're going to get sued. Okay, open space that they sell liquor, they run events, they do everything in Eastern open space. Now, we have this project right now where Northwest Open Space, we're selling alcohol. We have a winery. So we're breaking all the rules again. So now we're afraid of being sued. Okay? Measure X. Does it come into effect or does it not? My understanding has always been that Measure X does not come into effect because we're keeping the zoning from one open space to another open space. That's what I've been told. As far as stables go and equestrian, we've been working on that for 3 years, Mayor. I don't know how you didn't know that, but for 3 years we've been saying we should maybe bring in equestrian because that's what our city is.
Because you were always, the proposal I saw was a Wild Mustang Ranch and a link to the trail.
When we had stables, it's okay, no big deal. But we're trying to do
Nothing
something.
against Mustangs, just not apples to apples.
I understand, but we had stables also.
Okay.
Okay, so we have to pay for this. That's the million-dollar question. Now, Mayor, you say we have the money. Mayor Pro Temp, you say we don't have the money. Somebody's got to be right, somebody's got to be wrong. Do we have the money to go and do something with Northwest Open Space? I was a big contributor to Northwest Open Space, so were my brothers and my family. We contributed. We wholeheartedly agreed with the concept. But I never thought in a million years that it would stay the way it is right now. Now, right now, it's a disaster. A month, 2 months ago when it rained, it was beautiful. But now for the next 6, 7 months, it's going to be a dust bowl. And now we have people living in our creek. We have RVs in Northwest Open Space parked there all day. I know because I'm there every day. Okay, it's a disaster. It needs to be taken care of. We need to do something. If we have the money, great, do something. Build gardens, build agriculture, build whatever you want to build if we got the money. But don't tell us that you don't have the money and we're going to leave it the way it is. It's not fair to the Hashman people because if you do that area and the rest is a disaster, that's not fair. Who's going to want to go? I mean, I want to go and I want somewhere to go, somewhere to visit. When I designed a project, I wanted to make sure that we could afford it, that people like ourselves, not kids, but ourselves. I don't want soccer fields. I want paths. I want equestrian. I want to walk through there. I want water features. I would love to see the orange trees come back. I'd love a place to go have a glass of wine. I'd love a place, maybe if we go camping and they pay for everything and it takes care of everything, that's a great idea also. All I know is that with myself, my family, my friends, we would like to see something done at Northwest Open Space that's not what's being used right now. It's a disaster. Thank you.
So just a couple of quick thoughts on the funding. So I wasn't part of the original vote history on the Hashman Tribe's Putuidem Park Village. I kind of came in on the tail end of that where we redesigned it a little bit, scaled it back just a little bit. And there was always the sense, with different conversations with staff, that we were pretty well underway with the funding based on measures still in the bond fund or account, if you will, that had to be used for parks. Now, we had this terrible lawsuit, which upset the apple cart a little bit, and there's some unknowns from that, and there's an unknown as to the future use of the eastern open space. So it feels a little bit more precarious now, but I wouldn't say that there's no money for the Putuidem Village. There is still some money, and that's where it sits right now. So I think Mayor Pro Tem, I don't want to speak for him, but has reinforced the theme and the notion that, hey, we're not a wealthy city. We don't have a ton of extra cash flow. We have this deal we cut with the county on extending the landfill, and we had ideas that could really enhance some of the amenities in our city, because the biggest trade-off for that is Whispering Hills community up there that now has to wait another couple of generations to get the park they were promised, right? So it's sort of a natural for the spending of the funds. But that was before these guys hit us with this lawsuit, and we had a big settlement, and now we have a legal case going, and we don't know what we'll get back from that and so forth. So there's some question mark around those funds as well. So, but we are not one of those cities with an overabundance of revenue for a variety of reasons, and that's just a reality that we deal with. So it comes up, and it comes up legitimately in conversations and considerations like this. As far as the land, I mean, and I think the speaker is one of our great businessmen in town. He woke me up to a couple of things around that open space with a cart ride one evening, which was terrific. And he had a plan that he first put forward that was appealing to some and some sort of softer uses. But we're not, at City Hall, we don't get overwhelmed with requests to develop the Northwest open space. So I can understand why people who live out next to it might feel a greater sense of urgency, but we just don't get a ton of input from people that, hey, we just got to get this developed. It's just not the case. Now it's come up more recently, and now people are getting a little more opinionated and feedback, and that's great. That's why we're here. But it's not like people have been knocking down the door for 20 years saying, develop the Northwest open space, we did the parks and nothing else, let's get going. I haven't heard that in 3 years on the council. So just as far as putting that out there in the interest of fairness to the broader issue. Who's our next speaker? Who has the mic? That's the power. You have to, if the mic in hand, you're next. Yes.
Hi, I'm Kathy Summers. I'm a fairly new resident. I just moved in August. I live pretty close to where this park is. I only heard about this issue just yesterday, and I already have very strong feelings about it. And listening to what's been said tonight, one thing that I really can't comprehend is why we're holding up the Putuidem Village for a zoning issue that could be resolved fairly easily and then worry about the bigger picture later. This needs to get done, and it needs to happen now. Why is it not?
Because it is caught up in the process. Welcome to town. When did you move in?
In August.
Welcome.
Yeah.
But as you can tell, we love people here with the quickly developed strong feelings. We're a very eclectic, wonderful community, and people are passionate about things, especially open space. That's part of our charm. Who's our next speaker?
Hi, I'm Marianne Davidson. I live in Los Rios, so we are surrounded by parks. And my comment is just that everyone says they love a park in their neighborhood, and we got our fabulous Los Rios Park. We were very involved in many, many meetings, the process for building that park. But now the volunteers pull the weeds, my husband picks up the trash, and we are inundated with homeless people. So beware what you wish for. Not open space is public open space, and you know what the situation is with homeless. They have a right to be in any public open space. So I think I agree with Mr. Adams that just because it's open doesn't necessarily make it wonderful and lovely, and maybe something else could be done. And yes, I glammed somewhere on the coast of California, and it was quite lovely, and it was quiet, and little camping people were there. So I'm not totally opposed to it. I think everyone just needs to take a breath and not automatically have the knee-jerk of, anything we decided 30 years ago has got to stay as gospel, because that's just not going to work. We need money to fund to take care of all these wonderful open spaces and parks.
Thank you.
My name is Tina Claire, and I just wanted to say there's 39% of our current population that did not live here during the time that these votes were taken for open space, and I'm one of those. So yes, I see it out there. It's beautiful. I've walked my dogs. And then I've seen it out there when it's really bad. It's a mess, like it's been said before. Not only are there evidence of homeless people, there's a lot of trash. The most thing I see out there is the In-N-Out burger wrappers, which I think is interesting. People must pull their car in there and eat In-N-Out, but that's not my idea of open space. Open space, for me, is a place to go and enjoy and spend time outside, spend time doing things that are not necessarily sports related. But I also think that what I hear a lot in here and what I hear a lot within our city is that there is a division, and a house divided will not stand. So I think what I'm hearing is that we are most in favor of having a park in tribute to our Hashiman neighbors, or not neighbors, what would you be? You would be no, not nations, residents. You guys started here, we get that, and I believe that everyone's in support of that. I shouldn't say everyone, most people are in support of that. But I just can't help but want for a win-win situation. I mean, is there any way that we can work together and have other things out there? I too am in favor of camping, and if a commercial development comes in and can pay for this, can pay for the park, can pay for some other things that are out there, what's wrong with that? That's a win-win situation. That's where everybody wins. Because as all of the taxpayers, we would win because the expense would be incurred by someone else. So it's not that I just want to open the doors and say, any development, come in here and develop. I want something from them. If we can put things out there that are great that we can all enjoy, have someone else pay for that, I think that's a win-win situation.
Thank you. Next comment?
Hi, I'm Ashley Tilling, current resident. Hopefully this isn't going to light a whole fire, but maybe if the
be careful, because if it does, all 4 law enforcement officers have left the building.
Yeah,
we had a whole row of them. Had me wondering for a moment there, but they left 20 minutes ago.
That's okay. I know most of those guys. But what about putting some schedule to it, just to let us know what your expectations are? Like
putting some schedule to it?
Yeah, to the whole process. Like, how long do you think it'll be before you change the laws to make it move forward? How long do you think it is before we break ground on the Hoshiman Village? How long do you think it'll be? Is it a 3-month process to get the regulations changed, or is it 6 months, or is it a year? Is it going to be 6 months, or is it going to be 2 years to get the Hoshiman Village started? Is it going to be a 4-year process or a 1-year process to get the park kind of finished out? What's your views on that? Without holding you to the fire.
I was speculating, and I'm going to let Ben Siegel, our city manager, answer.
Thank you, Mayor. We plan on our next step returning to the City Council in August with a summary of the feedback received from these 2 workshops. At that point, if the City Council provided direction to move forward with, for example, the Putuidem Village Park, the design on the modified park concept is nearly complete. So we would ultimately need to bring back the final design documents and authorize competitive bidding. Then a couple months later, the council could award a contract and start construction. So somewhere in the 3 to 6 month time frame, provided that we receive direction on the zoning issues that have been discussed this evening.
Thank you. Did you hear that all right?
Yeah.
It's about a 3 to 6 month.
Yeah, I kind of like to throw it over to the woman that was from the Hoshiman people. Like, does that help you out? Does that make you feel a little better?
Next speaker.
Laura Fries again. My question during the question time was how many people here had voted in the 1990 open space ballot issue, and also the 2008. And now I'm going as far as a comment is on neither one of those ballot items was there small print that said we had to generate revenue to pay for it. We voted to pay for it and then basically figured that the general fund would be the money coming in to maintain it. There was no specific thing saying that some sort of revenue generating use had to be on open space. I think that in the last couple of years, Councilman Derek Reeve has gone ahead and gone forward saying that you had to have some sort of revenue generating use on our open space. And I think that's absolutely wrong, but a lot of people have started to believe that. I think the money to maintain our open space comes from other places, like bed tax for hotels or other tax revenue that we get through the city. And I think it's important for people to realize it was never part of the issues that we voted on to get more open space into this city, that we had to maintain it somehow by generating revenue on that open space. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing because Councilmember Reeve is not here. Derek has a very strong sense of dollars and cents, and he's fiscally pretty cautious guy. So I'm sure that he listens pretty openly when anything involves incoming revenue. That said, he didn't initiate this project, or he didn't initiate in 2017 going out to bid on the Northwest open space. It was really more, Jim was persistent with a plan with sort of softer uses, and it kind of opened up the door to it because he had a nice reputation in town, and the council was looking, I was in the minority, but I mean the council was looking to kind of open it up a little bit and talk about it and explore some things, and that's kind of in part why we're at where we're at. But Derek wasn't kicking and stomping to get the Northwest open space developed. Just if that's out there, it's not correct.
And I want to add kind of my thoughts to that. I've never once heard Derek express an opinion that open space is required to pay for itself with these bonds. I've never heard him express that. I do feel like, so that we're all on the same page, I've kind of expressed some thoughts on this earlier tonight, but when you're operating in a structural deficit and you're years behind providing basic services like paving your own streets, okay, and do not have the funds to meet those basic services, to spend millions of dollars doing a park improvement and an annual obligation of $60,000 to $80,000 to maintain that park when you do not have those funds today and no vision as to where those funds are going to come from, I think Derek would. I think he's fiscally responsible, and there is somewhere in the back of his mind that says, wouldn't it be the more prudent thing to do to identify how we're going to pay for the things that we're about to commit to spend on? And I don't think that there's a flaw in that thinking. Now, maybe some things we just need to bite the bullet and spend, and there's facilities allowed to do that. But I've never once heard him express the opinion that you just shared, that he somehow feels that in order to use these, they need to be generating their own revenue.
I'm Tim Kim, a longtime resident, and I came a couple weeks ago, I guess, and I just kind of listened, and I actually do a lot of work with Redtail coincidentally, and some of the owners of Redtail live in San Juan, and I know when Redtail heard about this, they didn't bring it forward, they just heard about it through the RFP process, and they thought, hey, this is in our hometown, if somebody's going to do something nice here, or do anything here, we want to do it and make sure we control it and make sure it's nice. And so Redtail does a number of things, but they do a lot of these, campgrounds, whether it's glamping or just a campground. I'm not quite sure how glamping became kind of vilified in this environment because it's just high-end camping. It's not a very commercial use. So I thought I'd just kind of provide some clarification. I've gone to a lot of the properties that Redtail owns, and their business is buying existing ones and fixing them up and making them look really cool. So somebody sent pictures to the city of something they thought we owned, and it was really crappy looking down in San Diego. It's not our property. It's not Redtail's. I don't work for them. I'm a consultant. But so I've gone to a lot of these, and virtually everybody I've talked to, like someone that spoke a couple weeks ago, thinks they're amazing. And glamping is just a way to stay in a nice place and still enjoy the outside, enjoy the trails, enjoy the natural environment. And I know we talk about, hey, glamping, this is some commercial use. Glamping is often, in fact, most often in open space. And if you think of state parks, even national parks, there are quite a few really nice campgrounds, nice glamping type sites, RV parks, in those areas for that very reason. So I know when Redtail looked at this, they're like, hey, first it was a response, but it was also how do we kind of blend, and it's especially morphed more into this, seeing all the interest in the community, how do we blend all the uses? And when we were up, in that council meeting and we heard Jim Adams' proposal, we're sitting there thinking, wow, they've got some really cool ideas too. We really like those ideas. And some folks said, hey, why don't you guys get together? And we said, yeah, why not? We talked that night, we've talked since then, and we've tried to take the best parts of those two proposals. And at the same time, we've looked at, hey, let's do some really awesome trails, which we already had them in there anyway, but we expanded the trails. It's not a big asphalt jungle. We do, it's probably one of the lowest impact developments you can have. You do it on DG, it's just decomposed granite. It's a natural materials. You use a lot of natural materials. You hardly even go underground. It's mostly above surface. So looking at parks, looking at the Hoshiman, the Putuidem Village, totally in support of that. And we've said, hey, not only will we do that, we'll pay to maintain that forever, for the life of our lease, which is long-term. we'll enhance the dog park, we'll pay to maintain that forever. So we're coming in saying, we'll maintain the whole park, we'll police it, it'll be policed and maintained 24/7, we've got staff 24/7, and we want to actually restore all the citrus groves that were there before. So our proposal, and if it's the pleasure at some point of the city or the community, would be to kind of blend all the best uses. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
I have a quick question. The map that's over there, the second to the right, it shows, it looks like orange and blue. Is that the area that we're talking about, or is it the entire space?
Well, the orange and the blue show spaces that haven't already been used for some other type of development.
Okay.
Dog park, staging area, flood control, Swanner House, these little smaller colors up here are areas that have some use on it.
Okay.
But the orange and the purple or that blue are the areas we're primarily talking about.
That's what I kind of thought. I'd like to build on what Mr. Adams said earlier. I've always viewed the Northwest Open Space as a piece of granite that hasn't had a statue carved out of it yet, and that it's just waiting for the appropriate use for it to come into blossom. And I believe that putting in the Putuidem Village will be part of that. But as I look at it from a project management perspective, I could expect that no matter what the choices are, it probably won't be until 2022 until some kind of permanent solution comes to play. And I agree with what Mr. Adams said. Right now, that space is completely unusable for all 37,000 residents, 11,000 owners of this property. So my suggestion would be to till the ground and level it and water it and put down some grass and mow it and let the residents use the space and to see how they would like to use it. And then as the Putuidem Village comes into play, then it will become a natural staging ground.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Okay, just a question. I should be more informed, and I apologize if this is not a smart question, but the bond that was voted on and passed in 1990, that was a vote to tax ourselves to purchase the land and make it open space, correct?
Correct.
So why can't we just, so if it was a vote and we paid for it, it seems logical that we would vote to change what we bought, right? If we need to change the zoning, because glamping sounds okay. There's been some other good ideas too, but if we have to change the zoning to create something different, we should vote on it just like we voted to tax ourselves and buy it. And that's to Cody's point of sticking to the process. And I don't know, I just think if we voted to buy it, we should vote to change it if we have to change the zoning.
Thank you.
And Mayor Pro Tem, I'm curious on your opinion on that.
I think that it always feels good to say, let's have a public vote. I think there's probably some people in this room who disagree with a comment that was made earlier about whether or not River Street is a big win for the city. That's going to come before the city council in a little bit. There's no public vote teed up for that. We didn't have public votes to change the zoning to allow for the different hotels and sort of things. I think that we live in a representative democracy, and for better or worse, Brian stuck our necks out and got yelled at for a few months and ran for office for people who voted for us so that we could make decisions. Not every significant decision in the city is going to end up in a public vote. There is a process to allow for the public vote to overturn a decision of a city council. It's through a referendum process, and our laws allow for that, and I think that's appropriate and useful. But I don't think that the law is pretty clear, okay, that a lot of these decisions, you voted for us and trusted. We're trying to get your input, but at the end of the day, you can imagine what would happen if every time a significant development came forward on public or private land, if we said, well, let's just do the safe thing. The safe thing would be to allow a public vote. And that might be very politically comfortable for the mayor and I, because then we don't have to take responsibility for any of the difficult decisions. And that's not what our founding fathers of our city or of our country had in mind when they set up a representative democracy. And I think in part because what you're trying to do is you're trying to ask a few people to get really, 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 really informed. okay, and to try to make some really difficult, educated decisions with a whole bunch of information. I've lived in this town for a long time and in this area for a long time, and I think that particularly in the last few years, we've seen some really poor decisions made, really expensive decisions made, as people walked around with incomplete information on flyers and said, this is true, believe this. This is true, believe this. Now let's have a referendum. Now let's have a lawsuit. And we're all paying the consequences for that process right now. So while it might be politically safe and easy for us to say, just pass it off to the masses and let them vote on it, that's not the way the law is written. That's not what's supposed to happen. If you feel like we make a stupid decision, that's what the referendum process is for, and you not only have the ability to override our decision, but you can throw us out of office through a recall. But in the meantime, we were elected to make decisions like these, and I intend to get as informed as I can and vote at least from my seat.
Yeah, so I agree with representative democracy. That absolutely makes perfect sense, but I think there is still some cases where it should go to a vote. This seems like a pretty big decision. And right after the 27 years or whatever it was of purchasing it and paying taxes on it, then the decision's made to change the zoning and do something different with it. So I'm not talking about making it easy on you guys. You guys don't have, you have a thankless job. Half the people love you, half the people hate you. But I think, in my opinion, which, everybody's opinion is valuable here, I think this is a big enough decision maybe to put it to a vote. And it's not the easy way out. And if a referendum looks like it might happen, that just sounds expensive to me. It sounds like it's going to cost the city more money, or what, I don't even know what goes into that process, but it just sounds expensive. It sounds like a headache and difficult. So get in front of it and maybe put it to a vote with what the people would want, because if the people want a glamping or a beautiful campsite, great. They voted to have it, and then it's there, so I don't know, but I appreciate your comments.
It's maybe I'm going to respond. I think it's what district do you live in? You can have my seat. There's a. I hesitate to even say this out loud, and I apologize if I offend some people, but there are nuance to these decisions that don't play out on a ballot. Okay? There's nuance into how you write something on a ballot, what information you include on a ballot, what information you don't include on a ballot. I want you guys to just imagine in your mind right now that we put a ballot around the entire city that said we're going to spend $2 million on a park improvement. Do you want an Hoshman Village or a skate park? Okay, and I want you to think for just a second about how that vote's going to come back in. Okay? So there's nuance here, okay? And there's judgment to be made. And I don't know that, again, I think it always in the back of our minds says it sounds really easy, just go to the public with it. It's never, I don't think it's always that easy.
I miscommunicated. I wasn't talking about voting on the specific stuff, but if the zoning needs to be changed, to do all the things we're talking about to make it more urban, that's what I'm talking about.
And that's a possibility for sure.
Hey, just a quick thought on that. The Measure X, I think, was passed on the second open space purchase. The first one was purchased in 1990. Folks agreed to take the tax hit, acquire a lot of acreage, and then when the second one came up, the Eastern Open Space, some concern came along with it, that it would, for whatever reason, perhaps be more prone to commercial development, and folks didn't want to get blindsided by that. And so Measure X, I'm not sure if it went on the same ballot, but I think it was awfully close. So the folks basically said, before we do this again and dig this deep again, let's clarify this. I'm of the opinion that if we put any kind of commercial hospitality facility in Northwest Open Space, it's going to have to go to a ballot. It's about 80,000. Now, I may not agree with Troy on this. I may not agree with our city attorney. But I just think that's the case. That's my gut tells me that's the case. But the notion that we might get into more nuanced area and not be 100% clear, your point's excellent, that, hey, this is an important area. These are people who own the land. It's not like a question about a private landowner's piece of land. We all own this. We all own a few blades of grass, basically. And so I get your notion that if it's nuanced, why wouldn't we play it safe in this case? So we'll see going forward, but all great suggestions and cautions tonight. Who's our next speaker? Who's holding the mic?
I am. My name is Michelle Castillo, and I am an Ahashiman woman. And I would just like to remind everyone that you're not building a village. You're not building a park. This is already a village. It's sacred land. And what we're asking for is preservation. That's what we're asking for. And that's what the elders and the Ahashiman people have been working on for the past, I believe, 5 years. And it got voted on already, sir, the one that wanted the glamping. It got voted on 3 times. But here we are still today, and I mean, you mentioned a circus. I feel like I'm in a circus right now. I was here last meeting, I'm here for this meeting, and it was the same thing. People are begging you. People who voted for you are begging you to help them preserve a piece of San Juan Capistrano. And for some reason, it's going over your head, and I'm not understanding why. Thank you.
Next speaker.
I have the other mic. Carrie Ferguson, former mayor. First of all, I want to thank the Ahashiman people that have taken the time to come here this evening. A lot of them have had to, it's family time, like it is for the rest of us, and I appreciate it. Just a couple of housekeeping things. It was Derek that proposed the RFP on the Northwest open space. And that's just a fact. Second is that we did face the issue of maintenance some time ago, last year, I believe, or the year before, possibly even. And $60,000 to $80,000 in the farm fund, which can only be used in certain ways, was found for that purpose. And it was found from the Christmas tree business across the street, which seemed appropriate. So that's just something to know about. I've really thought quite a bit about Putuidem Village and about what it is and what it's like. Understand that it will contain quiches, it will contain ramadas, ramadas being shade structures, quiches being homes of simulated, recreated homes similar to those of the Ahashiman people. It will contain the 4 directions that are so important to their spiritual life. It will have 6 interpretive signs. They're more than a sign. They interpret the culture and history of the people, and they also will share with us some of the things that allowed them to live there 10,000 years. And it's not until you really take a look at that you realize that, they know some things that we need to know. So it's very important. But here's my nugget, and that is that museums are an allowed use right now. And what this is going to be is an open-air museum. The closest thing I can give you that will probably resonate with those here is Jamestown. And I visited Jamestown a couple of years ago. And Jamestown has, I know that they still have an old church there like we have our mission. But other than that, everything's recreated. The ship is recreated, the homes are recreated, and they have people that tell stories. And we're going to have people that tell stories. Jackie's already talked about it. And if any of you haven't heard Jackie Nunez tell stories, you haven't heard anybody tell stories. She is a master storyteller. So I said, here's my question. The other thing that this is, and I think our last speaker said it quite eloquently. This is an archaeological site. It's an important archaeological site, and it's the last large open archaeological site in our city. It's a place that's known to be the original village of the Ahashiman people. And so it's really important to take some time and think about that. Do you want to cover that over with development, even if it's very nice? Or do we need to somehow say to ourselves, that means something, that we still have some open archaeological space? So, and I have a question, and this I'll direct to our mayor, and perhaps he can answer it, but at least think about it. If this site, if this Putuidem Village project is designated as an open-air museum, and we aren't wanting other changes, as if that is what people think, and they don't really, they think that there are enough other designations for the property. Could we just leave the zoning alone? So that's something to think about. Then lastly, I do want to talk about Tom's suggestion, Tom Rebar's, because I've spent time hiking along the creek, tried desperately to get that crossing for our equestrians. And Renee and I spent a lot of time hiking along there and standing there and thinking and talking to people and trying to come up with a solution. I hope someone will come up with a solution, because it needs to be done. So those are my thoughts, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, and I think the open air museum question has been asked, and we've delved into it, or we'll delve into it a little bit.
Yeah.
My name is Jacelyn Moreno. My family's lived here since 1978. I am an indigenous woman. My people are from Oklahoma, from Texas. We're Apache and Cherokee. Today I brought my daughter because this is a sensitive subject for me. I stand with my elders here, and I call them my elders because I'm not a Hutchman, but I respect them because they carried me all my life. This is my home. As they have carried all of you, and their ancestors are here, strong today, hoping for a good response, because we're not asking for consideration as indigenous people from you, immigrants that came over here and took all their land. We're not asking for consideration anymore. We're asking for action to now help protect the lands that you have taken from us. I don't want to take my daughter to the mission to learn about the indigenous people here. I want to take my daughter to protected, beautiful land, natural land, that these people, this beautiful community can still put up and honor their people and their tribe with, and their children, because they are welcoming. They have welcomed my family and many other tribes. I stand with them strong. Many other tribes stand with them strong. I was raised here. I went to Marco. I went to Del Obispo. I went to Capo. This is my home. I was here when Keneshita Farms was just still a little farm, before all of this was here. I stood, sir, at Junipero Serra, praying for it not to be built on sacred land where there's ancestors built there. That school should not be there. And I will stand firmly today in honor of those ancestors and these people here. because we don't need another glamping campground. There's hundreds of them that you can go to. There's hundreds of places that you can go to around this beautiful city and just be in peace, but there's none for these people. There is nothing. There is nothing left for the Hachime people here. It is embarrassing for me, as you know, because I feel like my San Juan community, as eclectic as we are, you know, we really don't see the picture. We don't see the big picture. What's going to happen? Look at Rancho Mission Viejo. Took all the mountains over there. It's not beautiful anymore. It's just houses. Is that really what we want? Is that what we want here? I don't want that. I want for us to be able to have at least a space. Just give them one space, their sacred motherland. Give them their space. They deserve it. They built that mission that you guys make so much money off of. Their ancestors' bones are in those walls. That's what I teach my children. Us as indigenous people, we would like for you to stop listening with your ears and start hearing us with your heart. That's what I've learned from my elders. Today, I would like to, on behalf of Jackie Nunez, because she can't be here, she's traveling right now. She said the right choice is leaving the decision made, approved by council, the SJC community, and with monies in place ready to go. Lead, show positive, supportive leadership by honoring our indigenous people and indigenous ways. Jackie Nunez.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker.
Yes, my name is Lori Porter, and I've been in town for 53 years now, a long time. 4,000 people when I moved in. It's changed quite a bit. I do the historical walking tours. We've been doing it for over 40 years, and I'm also the director of the Montanez Adobe open house. If you guys haven't been in, come see us. It's really beautiful. I want to talk just a little bit about the history of where we are right now, this city. Of course, the Hochman Nation was here, and that's why the mission was started. Guess who built the mission? The Hochman Nation. That is our first history in this town. Second part of that, they built all of our adobes. We don't know exactly the number, but we have 9 adobes left in town. Guess who built that? The Hochman Nation. After that, our history goes into the Rancho period. Guess who the Vaqueros were? That was them. We owe this town's history to the Hochman Nation. And if we don't understand that, then we can't have that history ourselves. It is our history. I am a Wyandot Indian, believe it or not. My great-grandfather is from Oklahoma, and he was full Wyandot. So I understand. I go back to my powwow, and it touches my heart. You guys have been working for this for so long. I remember when you had the fence going at J. Sarah, they have been trying to get a little piece of land. And our history that the people come to San Juan because it's a historical town. It's a beautiful town, and they started it. And how are we showing our appreciation? It's really important that we all feel the history that belongs to us because we live here now, but they gave it to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, I wanted to mention about the person who talked about going through there and putting a lawn in that area. So that whole area is loaded with artifacts and maybe burial grounds. And that village had over 10,000 people in it at one time. So we're not talking about just a few people here. But my other question to you guys earlier was because you guys, when I talked last week, again going back, I asked the size of the area for the Putuidem village. First it was 3 acres. And then when I sat down, they told me later it was 1.2 acres. And you guys keep talking about building the village, but I want to know, it's got to be more than 1.2 acres. Your dog park's way bigger than that. I would like to know what you guys' opinion of the size, or do you at least be in favor of increasing the size of this village?
So I think it's really a clarification question with staff. The scaled down version is how much acreage?
About 1.2. The scaled down version's about 1.2 acres. The original park was a little over 3 acres as designed.
3. So, okay. So, did you hear him?
Yes.
The original was 3. It's currently 1.3 at the scaled down size. From here, we'll see where things go, but that's where it sits today.
Yeah, because it just doesn't seem when the dog park's bigger than a place for a tribe.
Understand your point. Yep. Thank you. Next speaker.
Yes, hi. My name is Rosa Alarcon Rebar. I have lived here since 1967 when this town was just a brand new little city. And I knew a lot of the people that were the founders, the first council members, Bathgate, Boheims, and these people had a vision. And yes, I am so much in favor for a beautiful place for the Ahachime Nation to be there, to be represented. They were the founders, really. But the people that founded this city as a city, they had a vision. They had a vision of a beautiful village, a village that wouldn't have houses on top of their mountains, open space. That was what I grew up with. Now I have my grandchildren, they live here. And I want that for them. We've seen it grow incredibly, but yes, when I look around, when I hike the mountains, I see Laguna Niguel, I see every place else. There's no mountains anymore, so there's no villages. So what we're doing here is we're talking about an open space that could be an open space. A beautiful park for the Ahachime Nation, and let the rest be open. Let's work on it. You don't have to spend a whole lot of money to put trails and some grass and so that people can go and visit. If you put a place that's a glamping, okay, glamping, does that mean that I as a citizen can just show up over there and use their facilities and walk around their trails? Or am I going to have to pay a fee to go in there? People that are going to come to glamping are people from other places. They're not going to appreciate that these people who were the real founders of our nation are there. So we need to keep this space for our people. We voted for it. We all voted for it. We voted for open space. Yes, it might need some work, but I think we can do it. It doesn't have to be millions and millions of dollars spent to make it beautiful and walking. I walk in the walking trails up Cerro Ribal, and it's beautiful. There's trails, That's all you need.
Thank you. And I just want to say, if Lindsay and Matisse, we're probably down to 2 or 3. We're going on 8 o'clock, and we started at 5:30. And in fairness to everybody involved, staff, the people who have to clean up, and everyone, if you feel cheated when we wrap up after 2 or 3 more comments, email in, reach out to us through the city, and we could do a 3rd workshop if the demand is strong enough. So why don't we think about 2 or 3 more comments or questions from folks who haven't spoken yet, and then we'll probably put a wrap on it. Yes?
Hi, I'm Mary Gage Gillette. I live in town. And I had a question and a comment. The question that I was at this meeting, the city council meeting, and this conclusion is up there. And my sense of what the motion was at that time was not that it was going to be joined together and necessarily have to be decided with the Northwest open space all together. I mean, when
that's absolutely correct.
Okay, so I mean, I think that the conclusion summary is a little bit misleading.
It's been discussed in the same workshop, but it's absolutely correct.
Okay, so I'm interested in your how it was that a non-approved use, so to speak, at the Spanner House, what process did that go through? And obviously it was not as long and involved as this potentially is going to be. And why can't we just put that on through what the Putuidem Village is as it's been approved so far?
Specifically, the process that was used for Swanner, which looks a little bit out of whack with some of the documents, why can't we use the same process for the park?
Maybe not that exact same process, but I mean, I've been at a lot of meetings and there's variances
Separate
here
it out
and there.
for its own process.
Exactly.
Yeah, that may still happen.
Okay.
That may still happen.
All right, and I would only just like to say what my opinion is
Please.
that I understand that there are challenges of having just open space with the homeless people and trash and stuff, and maybe we could think outside the box and come up with something. But I definitely don't want that developed. I mean, maybe a little, but not in a commercial business, and the land is not mine anymore. It's not to go. And I also personally agree with Rosa that if you had this beautiful area in an open-air museum showing how the Indians lived for thousands and thousands of years, why not have the rest of the park be the milieu in which they would have lived? So it makes sense to me. So thanks, guys. And thank you, guys. Appreciate,
Sure. Next speaker, please.
Thank you. I'm Sharon Fudge, and I'm actually from Laguna Beach, and I'm here in support of the Hashiman tribes. And I've become very involved in Laguna Beach and actually up and down the California coast through the California Coastal Commission, and working on protecting our natural resources, which obviously this archaeological site would be a CEQA resource to be protected, and I'm sure you're going to be going through that. My concerns here are that maybe the discretionary powers of the city are not being used to the advantages of making this, which is obviously a less obtrusive and less obnoxious use than any of the other things that are being considered. I think that planning and zoning laws allow the discretion of the Planning Commission to allow for less obnoxious uses, even if they're not specifically called out. What I'm worried about is that this 1 acre site is going to get lost. How many home sites are in San Juan Capistrano that are bigger than this village is going to be? I think that whatever other uses are used around it, and the Mayor Pro Tem was asking for ideas, I think the most important thing is that whatever other uses are buffering or up against this are respectful of this village. And just last week, Governor Newsom gave an executive order apologizing for California's history of violence against Native Americans. And there's a historic El Camino Real that goes up and down the roadways here in California. And there's been just a brand new movement to remove some of these mission bells as representative of the torture that was done, very similar to a lot of the monuments that are in the South of America. So I'd like you just to respect and make sure that no matter what goes around there, that it's not encroaching upon the importance of this native land.
Thank you. We've got one more comment and/or question, and we're at the 8 o'clock hour.
I want to just respond to that last one just really briefly. There's all sorts of judgment that we can use as a city council. Okay, we could certainly choose to approve the Hotchman Village and as it stands, even if the zoning code doesn't allow for it, even if it's explicitly prohibited, we certainly could do that. Okay, there is a context I think that this city council is sitting in. Okay, a previous city council exercised some judgment on the Vermeulen property over here. Okay, that cost millions of dollars. They exercised some judgment on a referendum against a hotel that was proposed downtown, and it cost the city millions of dollars. They exercised some judgment on a second hotel. We had council members filing environmental claims against the riding park, exercising their judgment, and it cost the city millions of dollars. And so I feel like there's some urgency in the room that says, come on, guys, they broke the law when they approved the Swanner house out there. Can't you just break the law again? We all want it. Well, no, I want to be explicitly clear. When the zoning code prohibits the sale of alcohol, and we approve a winery and alcohol and restaurant on the site that explicitly is prohibited, when there is, no, just work with me for a second, okay? It's not legal, okay? And we could say, well, who cares? The people want it, so let's just do it, okay? And that might feel comfortable tonight where people want things that they want, okay? But we're reeling financially because previous electeds just chose to do what they thought felt nice and people told them that they wanted without proper respect for the law. Okay, we're trying to do this, but no, I'm not. I won't be voting to say, it's probably not legal, but everybody seems to want it, so let's just move forward. I think it's worth taking a few extra months and doing it right, and that will be my position going forward.
I'd like to just rebut what you said. If you guys have approved the wine and alcohol sales out there without some variances, well, obviously that's wrong, and I certainly hope we don't get sued. What I'm suggesting is that if there's a way to correctly alter this by changing it or the conditional use permit or whatever, because I've been to a lot of meetings where things get changed
So thank you.
easily.
That's literally exactly what we're trying to do.
Okay, that's fine. However, I want to tell you that I am offended by your mistaken assumption that I'm suggesting that you break the law to allow for the Origination Village. That's not what I'm suggesting.
I wasn't responding to your comment.
All right.
All right, maybe one more.
If I may, yes, I wanted to speak about financing because that's been such a hot topic tonight, and maybe hot topic but not thoroughly explored. Prop 68 was mentioned by the lady over here earlier this evening as possible funding source, and there wasn't much of a detailed response to that. I'm very familiar with Prop 68. I'm one of the co-authors of it. And I can tell you there's about $500 million in Prop 68 that is for restoration of open space and restoration of Native American cultural sites. That is a topic that really needs to be explored by your staff because there's a lot of funding there for that. There have already been 2 RFPs that have gone out through the state agencies for that. There's a third one right now that is out there right now. Total of those 3 is about $59 million totally, but there's still an awful lot of money left.
Would you be willing to help us with that?
I would be happy to, and I'll give you my card, give your staff my card to help you with that, because there is a great opportunity. As a matter of fact, anything that has indigenous culture attached to it, whether it's a space or a historical site, or where the indigenous cultures are involved in the process, it scores extra points, big extra points in that competitive process. So it's a funding source that you really need to explore. And of course, that would be used primarily for the to go towards whatever you need to improve the property. As far as ongoing maintenance, it sounded to me like from the former mayor that there was money already identified and designated as providing that ongoing maintenance cost, so that issue may be resolved by itself. And then one final comment. I'm not a Hokshaman. I have no Hokshaman blood. I have no indigenous blood that I am aware of, but I am an American, and I have an American heritage, and the Hokshaman heritage is part of my heritage, and it's part of the heritage of everybody in here. Anybody who lives certainly in this town, but I also happen to live in an area of Hokshaman culture, and that's part of my heritage. So we should all be looking at that. And when you suggest that the village has been scaled down from 3 acres down to 1.2 acres, from just a perspective from an outsider, that seems ridiculous, to use the phrase. It seems totally inadequate. I know Ms. Castillo back here used the word preserve. And you're not creating something, you're preserving a heritage that far exceeds, the heritage of most of us here on this land. So I would encourage you to take a serious look, and I think 3 acres probably isn't enough either. You really need to look at expansion of that. Thank you.
Well, if you're going to secure us $500 million, we can reset.
Matisse, we're going to wrap it up. So excellent. And by the way, I would suggest if we are in any way under exploring Prop 68 and funds available for parks, we'll fix that immediately. So thank you for some of the thoughtful feedback and the broader feedback. We heard a lot of great things tonight about different ideas that people have about the scenery, about the uses, about the complications and an understanding of what the zoning and general plan is and how everything's not as easy as it looks. But know this, whatever takes place from here is a very public process. And remember, especially if you didn't get to make your comment tonight, we have a 3-minute segment at the beginning of every meeting, and our next is on July 2nd. You can come in the afternoon at the start of closed, which is at 3 o'clock typically, or at 5 o'clock at the start of open session, and deliver your thoughts and comments on anything related to this, and our next meeting is on July 2nd, so you're always welcome to do that. We're really grateful for the feedback tonight. All of it's very helpful. Some of it's very similar to 2 weeks ago, but some of it's not. Some of it's new, and here and there sparks some new ideas, and we'll build on all of that. And let's just keep giving the process and everyone the benefit of the doubt. And I think we'll move forward and we'll come to a great place with whatever we do. One thing I hope we don't do is let the possibility of graffiti or homeless people sleeping in parks eliminate our desire for parks. We have to recognize we're in a very strange situation right now with regard to the law and the tragic flow of homeless people, most dealing with addiction and mental illness, and some things that are going on with that. But I think there'll be some changes to come with that that'll bring a little normalcy to that picture. And that's just defeatist, right? We want to be excited about anything we do out there, and we'll figure out a way to keep it clean and maintained and graffiti-free, I promise you that. So, to add?
No comments other than to thank you guys for coming out tonight. We appreciate you being actively involved.
Very much. Thank you. Good night.